was born into a world of chandeliers, velvet curtains, private jets, and the sound of glasses clinking in golden halls, but none of it meant anything to him, because from the first day he came into this earth, the doctor whispered a truth that crushed his millionaire father's pride and broke his mother's spirit: "Your son is blind, sir, and there is nothing that medicine can do." His father, Richard Holloway, a man who made his fortune through oil and real estate, refused to accept the diagnosis. He flew in specialists from New York, London, Geneva, and Dubai, each one poking and prodding at the boy's delicate eyes, shining lights, whispering jargon, recommending surgeries, but after years of tests and failed procedures, the truth remained solid: his son, Michael, would never see. Richard hardened his heart, masking his shame behind power, money, and arrogance, while his wife, Eleanor, sank into depression, spending more and more time in her bedroom until one cold December night she died quietly, leaving the boy with nothing but the faint memory of her perfume and the softness of her lullabies. Growing up blind in the Holloway mansion was a strange paradox. The boy had every material possession a child could dream of: marble staircases, fountains in the garden, a room filled with toys from across the world, but not a single real friend, not one person who treated him like he wasn't broken. The maids whispered about him behind closed doors, calling him the cursed heir, while the tutors hired by his father taught him math and music out of duty, never warmth. His father loved him, yes, but it was a love covered in control, a love that wanted to cage him, keep him hidden from the world so the Holloway empire would not be embarrassed by weakness. By the time Michael turned 17, he had developed a sharp tongue, a quick wit, and a secret longing to experience the world beyond the gates, though he couldn't see it. He often pressed his palms against the cold iron of the estate fence, listening to the sounds of children laughing in the distance, imagining what their faces might look like. It was during this restless, lonely period of his life that Grace entered the story. Grace, the black maid who came from nothing, who answered a desperate job posting because her 2 young children were hungry and her landlord was threatening eviction. She arrived at the mansion in the rain, her shoes worn thin, her back already sore from years of scrubbing floors for people who never once bothered to learn her name. Richard Holloway saw her as just another disposable worker, someone to polish the gold banisters and mop the endless marble corridors, but to Michael, she was different from the very first moment. He heard her humming as she cleaned, a low, soulful tune that reminded him of the lullabies his mother once sang. One afternoon, curious, he asked her to stay a moment and talk. Grace was startled. No one in the Holloway mansion had ever asked her for conversation, let alone the master's blind son, but she sat down hesitantly on the edge of his bed, and when she spoke, her voice was rich, warm, and filled with life. She told him stories of her childhood, of running barefoot on dusty roads, of her grandmother who believed in healing through touch and prayer, of nights when the stars were the only lanterns in the sky. Michael listened with an intensity that shocked her. Though he could not see her face, he felt her words paint colors in his mind. Over the weeks, a friendship bloomed. Grace treated him not like a fragile porcelain heir, but like a boy capable of laughing, teasing, and dreaming. She would guide his hands across objects in the mansion, describing their shapes and colors vividly, helping him build a secret world of images in his mind. But one stormy evening, when thunder rattled the windows and loneliness pressed heavy on his chest, Michael broke down in front of her, confessing the pain that haunted him every day, the pain of knowing he would never see the sky, never see his own reflection, never know what his mother looked like beyond the fragments of memory. He wept, and Grace, moved by an instinct older than reason, reached out and rubbed his eyes gently with her rough, calloused fingers, whispering a phrase her grandmother always said when she healed scraped knees and fevers: "Light finds those who believe." The moment her skin touched his eyelids, something strange happened. Michael froze, his breath caught, because for the first time in his life, a faint glimmer pierced the black void of his vision. It was weak, like the flash of a dying candle, but it was there, a shimmer of light, impossible yet undeniable. He gasped, trembling, describing the sensation to Grace, who pulled back in shock. "You saw something?" she asked, her own heart racing. Michael nodded furiously, saying it was like a spark had entered his darkness. The next day, when Grace touched his eyes again, the spark grew stronger. He began to see vague outlines, shapes bathed in fog, as if a curtain were slowly lifting. By the 3rd week, he could describe the color of the curtains in his room, the glint of light on the polished floor, even the outline of Grace's face, which he said was surrounded by a warm glow. It was a miracle, but miracles often breed suspicion, and when Richard Holloway heard his son babbling about seeing, he dismissed it as delusion. "Don't fill his head with fantasies," Richard barked at Grace, warning her to focus on cleaning, not meddling. But Michael knew it was real, and Grace believed too, though she didn't understand how or why. And so they continued their secret ritual, each touch bringing him closer to full sight, until one morning he woke up and saw the sunrise from his bedroom window, his first true sunrise, a painting of fire and gold across the sky, so beautiful it made him collapse to his knees in gratitude. Yet sight brought not only wonder but revelation. As Michael explored the mansion with new eyes, he began noticing things he had never known. The guards patrolling the gates with cold, sharp eyes, the locked doors to rooms he was never allowed to enter, the way his father barked orders at the staff, treating them like slaves instead of humans. Worst of all, he saw how the others looked at Grace, disdain, contempt, as if her very presence was an insult to the golden walls. Rage stirred in him, rage he had never felt before, and with it came dangerous curiosity. Why had his father kept him so sheltered? Why was the mansion surrounded not just by beauty but by invisible chains? And most unsettling of all, why did Grace's touch awaken his sight when no doctor in the world could? He began digging for answers, sneaking into the forbidden parts of the mansion with Grace's help. One night, they stumbled upon a locked study filled with medical files, reports of failed surgeries, and correspondence between his father and doctors around the world. But tucked between the papers was something far stranger, a letter from a woman Michael had never heard of, warning Richard that the boy's blindness was not natural but the result of a curse placed long ago, and that only the hands of the humble could restore what was stolen. Michael trembled as Grace read the letter aloud, his mind spinning with the possibility that his entire life had been shaped not just by misfortune but by dark secrets his father refused to acknowledge. And in that moment, standing in the dusty glow of the forbidden study, Michael realized two things: his sight was returning, and with it came a destiny he could not yet understand. And his father, the man he had trusted even in his coldness, might be hiding truths darker than blindness itself. Michael's world, once pure darkness, was now filled with light, but the light revealed truths far more terrifying than the darkness ever had, for with his new eyes he saw his father's empire for what it truly was, not a kingdom of success and honor, but a fortress of secrets, lies, and greed, guarded by men who carried guns beneath their suits and watched him as if he were a prisoner, not a son. Grace warned him to be careful, but Michael's hunger for truth burned too brightly, so he confronted Richard one night in the grand dining hall, accusing him of hiding the cursed letter, demanding to know who had condemned him to blindness. His father's mask of control shattered, and for the first time Michael saw fear flicker in his eyes. Richard confessed that long ago, in his ruthless climb to wealth, he had betrayed a partner who cursed his bloodline in vengeance, swearing that his firstborn would never see the world. Desperate to protect the family name, Richard spent millions on doctors and walls to keep the boy isolated, terrified that if the curse was broken, the secrets of his empire would unravel. But now that Michael could see, Richard's fear turned into fury, and he ordered Grace to be fired, warning that if she ever stepped foot in the mansion again, she would vanish without a trace. Michael refused to let her go, and in that defiance, a war ignited between father and son, money and power on one side, faith and love on the other. That very night, with Grace's help, Michael escaped the mansion, stumbling through the city streets for the first time, overwhelmed by the lights, the people, the stars above that felt like heaven itself. But freedom came with a price. Richard's men hunted them like shadows, determined to drag Michael back before he could expose the truth. And as the chapter closed, the impossible miracle of sight became a dangerous weapon, for Michael was no longer just a blind heir, he was a witness to his father's sins, and witnesses, in Richard's world, were not allowed to live. The city was alive with light and chaos, but for Michael and Grace it was a battlefield, every alley echoing with the footsteps of men sent to drag them back into the gilded prison of the Holloway mansion, and when they finally confronted Richard on the rooftop of his own skyscraper, rain pouring like judgment from the heavens, father and son faced each other not as family but as enemies, Michael demanding the truth, Richard clutching a gun, insisting that love meant control and survival meant obedience. In that moment, Grace stepped between them, her voice steady, declaring that no empire built on curses and fear could last, and as Richard raised the weapon, Michael's eyes, once cursed into darkness, saw everything with piercing clarity, the trembling of his father's hands, the weight of his lies, the emptiness in his power. Choosing love over fear, Michael shielded Grace with his own body, ready to die free rather than live blind under chains, but instead of bullets, he heard his father's sob break through the storm. Richard dropped the gun, collapsing under the guilt he had carried for decades. The curse, bound by blood and betrayal, shattered in that instant of repentance, and the rain cleared to reveal a dawn more radiant than any Michael had ever imagined. He turned to Grace, seeing her clearly for the first time, The strength in her tired eyes, the beauty of her soul shining brighter than the sunrise, and he knew that no wealth could compare to the gift she had given him, not just sight, but freedom, hope, and love. Together they walked away from the empire of shadows, leaving Richard to face the ruins of his greed, while Michael stepped into a new life where light was not just something he could see, but something he could finally live.